People want to buy from somebody they know, like, and trust. You've got to have a LinkedIn page where you can share things that show people who you are. People want to know what you've learned, what you've struggled with, what you've been successful with. It may be Facebook, it may be YouTube, whatever it is. It's about sharing things where they can get to know who we are.
LinkedIn isn't a resume. We got to be sharing what we've learned in our 40 years or our 30 years or whatever the number is. People can tell when we're not authentic. People can tell when we're trying to make something up. There's something really important about being consistent and authentic at the same time. And for boomers, that should be easy. It's just getting past that fear. Don't make LinkedIn be like your freaking resume. Make it be who you are and what you bring to the party. It's really that simple. Hey, welcome to Sales Cigars, the podcast for entrepreneurs where the only smoke we blow is cigar smoke. I'm your host, Walter Crosby, and this episode is brought to you by the Sales Integrator. Crush your sales obstacles with the Sales Integrator. Today I'm smoking a Tatoué pork tenderloin, and I always loved the pork tenderloin. He brought him back a little while ago. I picked up a box. Highly recommend if you want something that's in that medium to bold space. Great cigar, well made. Today, my guest is Butch Nicholson from Fist Bump. We talk about being comfortable being uncomfortable, specifically helping Gen X and boomers get comfortable doing something they've always done, building relationships with the know, like, and trust, but doing it with technology, which is the new thing that boomers and older Gen X's have to come to grips with. So go grab a cigar, a cocktail, and strap in for another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So Butch, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your nice sunny afternoon in Georgia.
Thanks, Walter. It's a pleasure to be having a cigar with you.
It's more rare than you would think that somebody actually can have a cigar with me at the same time we're recording this. And you've got a nice little setup there. And it's like we're just sitting across the table from each other. Enjoying a cigar. The only thing better would be if we're doing it in person. So, what are you smoking?
This is kind of my everyday go-to cigar. It's a Diesel Rage, reasonably priced. Don't have to worry about it if I lose it.
Reasonably priced, but also kind of on the more bold side of the flavor palette. So,
I'm a bolder guy.
Big boy. Like I'm more of the middle of the road guy, but that might be because I have 6 or 7 cigars a day.
Walter, that's me. I tell people 4 or 5 and they're shocked. I'm going to tell them I got a good friend who said 6 or 7, so I'm better than him.
Well, you got to start early. Like, I have a breakfast cigar where I don't have breakfast, but coffee and a cigar and a little bit of a walk all kind of go hand in hand in my mind.
I have a 30-minute ride every morning. Well, not every morning, but most every morning to a meeting I go to. And my companion is a cup of strong coffee and a strong cigar.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that. No cholesterol in that.
No fat.
So let's jump in. Like, let help the audience understand, Butch. How did you get to doing what you're doing now? Give us a little bit of an arc of your career.
So I sold things even when I was a kid, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners did too. But I had my first real job was working for a major insurance. My first real sales job was working for a major insurance company 45 years ago. And, when I started, Walter, and I'm sure you remember these days, you had a phone had a dial on it. And, if somebody actually called you back. They got the switchboard, and the switchboard had to transfer the call to you, and had those wonderful answering machines that may or may not have gotten our recording.
Right.
So it was quite different than it is today. But early on in my career, very early on, I realized there were some guys in the office that were doing a whole lot better than everybody else. So I thought, I don't know what they're doing, but I'm gonna find out what they're doing. And what I learned pretty quickly from a lot of good producers at the time was people want to buy from somebody they know, like, and trust. And I believe that is as true today as it was then. Now, how we build that know, like, and trust has changed, but people still want to deal with someone they know, like, and trust. So I built my sales career on building those kind of relationships before ever trying to sell somebody something.
And you're, to a large extent, that's what you're doing today, but you kind of niched it, right? So, because we know each other a little bit, because I did your podcast.
Right. That's great.
Recently. But the idea that baby boomers have to adapt the approach to know, like, and trust, right? Given what the rotary phone is, what you're talking about, and the switchboard and that, if you recall, that my grandmother's phone weighed about 12 pounds.
Yeah.
And it was a weapon, right? If you took that receiver and smacked somebody upside the head, you could do some damage. And it had the actual bells in it, right? You know, when you took it apart. And that's changed to this little device here that we carry around, a computer and this device in our pocket. But the thing that it's frustrating for guys like you and me, when we're talking to a sales rep or somebody and we're like, hey, can you go make a call to this prospect and ask them about this, right? When you follow up with them to see if they made the phone call, they didn't make the phone call. They sent an email, right? And it's like this phone is an annoying little app on their smart device that they don't like to use, especially in sales. And I'm just kind of curious your perspective on that, because you grew up being comfortable on the telephone, right? Even in a phone booth, right?
Yeah. First thing my manager told me was go to the bank and get a roll of quarters, so when you're out of the office, you can make a call.
Right.
If you don't know what that is, if you're younger and don't know what that is, Google it.
Yeah, look up Superman. There was literally a line that you could use when you're in a phone booth, right? When you got the receptionist and it's like, hey, I'm here to talk to Butch. And, who is it? It's like, Walter. Is it raining there? No? Okay, good. Because it's raining here. It's pouring. And I'm, my feet are getting wet, right? So you could get put in, especially if it was a long distance call, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
We're really dating ourselves here. So that making that phone call, right? That's just something that's natural for you. You don't have an issue with that. And boomers are good at that. So how do we have to adapt as an older Gen X and a boomer to be able to build that know, like, and trust? What are your recommendations there?
Let me say this, Walter, just to kind of set that up a little bit. There are a lot of, if you're a baby boomer, you went through the crash of 2007, 2008, the financial crash. And there are a lot of baby boomers, me included, perhaps you too, who never thought they'd be working at this age. And they're not working because they just love working. They're working because they need to. They may, and I love my job. I'm blessed to have my job. But I need to work. But we have to meet buyers where they are, not where we wish they were. And McKinsey did a report 2 years ago. It's a couple of years old, but I imagine it's still true. The average B2B buyer today is 39 years old. Well, I have a daughter that's 40, and I know she buys very differently than me. And if I call her, I'll get a text. Chances are good I'll get a text back in the next day or two. Unless I say, this is your father. I need to talk to you now. And it's not there. That's how they grew up. I remember when my daughter was in college, she wanted to change her phone plan from like 300 minutes to 50 minutes and then add 300 text messages a month. So we have to be able to meet them there. We have to adjust to them. We can't ask them to adjust to us and be successful.
There was a line that I was taught, like, there's no bad prospects. It's just bad salespeople, because we have to go be who they need us to be and operate in a way that, meets them where they are, as you said. And that kind of fired back in my memory after you said that. That's good for anybody. We got to go be where they are and operate like they are, which is harder for a boomer.
Yeah, for sure. Although if you can learn a few skills, it's easier.
So what would a boomer need to, in your experience, like, what's one of the things that trips us up?
Think about this, and this seems really simple, but I think it's important to understand and accept. So when's the last time you answered the phone if you didn't know who it was that was calling you?
This morning, but only because I was expecting a call. You're right. You don't typically do that as a general rule. We let it go to voicemail.
Yeah. So calling people is, it just doesn't work anymore. And think about your emails. And I'm sure, Walter, you're a successful guy. I've been around for a while. You probably get 50 emails a day and you have no idea who they're from.
50 get deleted for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you probably, where I found most people, and you're probably like this, I'm like this. I'll start down the list and I'll note like the 5 people I know and delete the other 65 that I don't know without even looking at what it might have said. So that doesn't work. And, back in our day, that's what we did. We made cold calls, send out emails, and it worked. But it doesn't work now. And as salespeople, sales leaders, CEOs that are our age now, we've got to accept that, whether we like it or not, that social platforms are where we have to be. And LinkedIn, whether you like it or not, is considered the business social media place. And I believe that's where you have to start. You have to have a LinkedIn page that just doesn't tell about who you are or what your company is or what your company does. You've got to have a LinkedIn page where you can share things that show people who you are. People want to know, what you've learned, what you've struggled with, what you've been successful with. What do you think about the industry? That's how we become known, liked, and trust. And that's true for other platforms too. Depending on the business you're in, it may be Facebook, it may be YouTube, whatever it is. We got to remember that it's not about telling them what we do or how great we are or how great our company is. It's about sharing things where they can get to know who we are.
There's something that I noted on your website about leadership is about connection, not exposure, which ties into what you're saying. We're in a digital age, right? And everything is either virtual or, people are just scrolling through. So if we need to be consistent on those platforms, and we need to be clear about what it is that we believe, that we actually have insights to offer, right? I mean, am I headed down the right track here?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think as a boomer, I'm right on the last edge of that, right? We're 64 was when I was born, so we're right at the edge. So I've had an easier time adapting than like my parents who were born in 44. Like, my dad still has a flip phone that's never freaking charged, right? Yep. He never answers it, never takes it anywhere with him. My mom's got an iPhone and she can text, but she can't do the email on the phone. So, and they don't answer phone calls unless they recognize and hear. There's also that issue. They got to hear the phone ring. But I think that's an important message, that LinkedIn isn't a resume, right? We got to be sharing what we've learned in our 40 years or in our 30 years or whatever the number is. We got to be able to, we have a perspective, and that may not resonate with everybody. That's okay. But it needs to resonate with the small, viable audience that we have, so that they start to connect with us. That makes that knowing part easier to get through. So how does somebody go about doing that when they're uncomfortable online? They're uncomfortable on LinkedIn or Instagram.
Sometimes we have to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
100%.
A lot of the people, not all the people, but so I'm right in the middle of baby boomers. I was baby boomers 45 to 65. I was born in 55. So I can claim to be a younger baby boomer or an older baby boomer. You've got to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable and just do it. And you'll be surprised that it works. But think back to the early 2000s. We all went to networking meetings. That was the big thing, face-to-face networking meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you were to, what's the first thing that you did in a networking meeting? Probably got a drink, but after you got the drink, you may have found some people you wanted to talk to or you knew you wanted to meet. But usually you'd see these little groups of people all around the room talking with each other. Well, if somebody walked up to a little group like that and said, "Hey, I don't mean to interrupt," while they're interrupting, here's my business card and we make really great widgets. And if you want a demo, call me.
You can turn it in a punch bowl.
Yeah, you could collect those business cards right there and put them in the trash can, because unless somebody wanted to make a note to make sure not to ever respond to this guy or gal again.
Sure.
So you got to take LinkedIn, social media the same way. When you meet somebody, hey, what do you do? Where are you? Where are you from? Oh yeah, that's where I'm from too. What high school did you go to? Or you're a golfer. Oh yeah, me too. Where do you play golf? Or whatever you do. What cigar store do you go to? I mean, that's the way you start conversations. And LinkedIn needs to be the same way. Those same kind of conversations when you start out. And it's about being authentic. And what I tell people that struggle a bit is I say, just don't get concerned about what you're typing. I was going to say writing, but what you're typing, just type from your heart.
Because people can tell when we're not authentic. People can tell when we're trying to make something up. Right? We tell stories, and those of us who have experience, we should be able to tell a story to make a point. And I think that whether you do that with words on a post or you do it with video, right, in a post, or you do it in reels, depending upon the platform, I think that's a really, really solid piece of advice, to be authentic as to who we are and share our experience, because you never know. Because at any given time, there's like 5% of buyers are in the market for what it is that we're looking for out of that whole group.
Yeah, if that many.
Exactly. So we have to be able to share our experience and our ideas and what needs to happen in a consistent fashion, because we never know when that person's going to show up. But then they're going to want to see things multiple times, right? Because it used to be it was like 8 for a while. They needed to have 8 touches before they would engage. And then it was 12. And now it's well past 20 to have people have some contact with you, whether it be a post, whether it be something on social media, an email, a newsletter, something where that they can figure out who the hell you are and why they might want to talk to you. And then that moment happens and then they engage. I think there's something really important about being consistent and authentic at the same time. And for boomers, that should be easy. It's just getting past that fear.
Well, you said something that just triggered something in my head that I think is really important. And this is one of the things that we work with our clients on a lot. And you said telling stories. And storytelling is to me, is one of the most effective and the easiest ways to become known, liked, and trusted. Share a short story, and then what'd you learn from that? The founder of Fist Bump, his name is Brandon Lee, and Brandon tells a story about coming across. He and his daughter, who was a young adult, were on a run, and he came across this sign that said, "Watch out for snakes." And he's scared of snakes, so he took a picture of that sign. And I don't remember exactly what his post is about, but he talked about running with his daughter, seeing this sign, actually seeing a snake while they were jogging, but it was off a ways and they kept going. And then tied it into some way, tied it into business. This is like when this happens when you're in business. And that's a very effective way to get your point across and start to build that know, like, and trust.
Those everyday occurrences, if you can relate them to business, but you got to be thinking about that. You got to be aware of that. I'm going to be selfish for a second. I do a weekly news email, which is sort of like a newsletter. But my thing is, I made this mistake, right? And then I tell a story about how I screwed something up. But there's always the lesson, right, that I took away from it. So you can learn from my stupid mistake, so you don't have to do that. And what's interesting is that it grows, people comment on it, but it's mostly based on the story that, there's a little bit of vulnerability in there, but it's authentic. And, and all I'm doing 52 times a year is saying, I screwed this up. Don't do this. Right. And I think that's it's a great way. You got to mix it up a little bit and, have some wins in there, but it's being able to tell stories, because since the beginning of humans, that's how we've communicated is by sharing these ideas, through story and getting people to connect, and boomers and early Gen Zs, that we're used to that. And we have those stories, so we should be sharing them. And I think that's really solid advice. Don't make LinkedIn be like your freaking resume. Make it be who you are and what you bring to the party. It's really that simple.
Yeah, and you never know what's going to happen. I remember seeing your, I believe your website, or it was at least a promotion for this podcast, and I saw Sales and Cigars. I thought to myself, that's two things I love. I got to meet this guy. And we had an immediate bond because of Sales and Cigars.
We talked about making that connection with people, right? So can you walk into a cigar shop in Omaha, Nebraska, right? And you walk in there, people are going to turn and look at you. But as soon as you go in the humidor and grab a stick, boom, you're in, right? Brother of the leaf. And you might not have anything else in common, but you have that thing. So you get like, what are you smoking today? And boom, you're off to the races. And there's some really cool people that I've met at cigar shops and cigar lounges around the country that, I'm still connected to, because, and you're there for a couple hours, right? So you can really create it. And does it all about business? No. Sometimes it's just about the connection of connecting with another human, but it's real and it's authentic. So it's easy to flow into. So why don't you share with the audience, like what fist bump does and how it helps people, make those connections and share that experience.
All right. And thanks for the opportunity to do that. And I won't bore the audience with some long sales pitch. We work primarily with CEOs and sales leaders who know that they need to have a presence in their industry. And I would say they're not looking to be influencers. They're looking to be influential.
Nice. Like that.
And being influential is a great way to be authentic. And one of the things that I've discovered, and somebody shared this with me, I wasn't brilliant enough to make this up, but logic spurs action, but emotion spurs sales. With some coaching, which we'll do at Fist Bump, teaching CEOs, sales leaders how to produce that kind of content. Just quickly, the number one objection we always get from sales leaders, it's like 99.9% is I don't have time. And just a fast version, we use live shows, and in an hour a week show, we can produce all the content that there are probably 10 to 15 types of content that we can craft for a CEO, sales leader, emails, direct messages, clips from the show, on and on and on, blogs.
Social media posts in general, yeah.
Yeah, social media posts. What we really work with them on is creating content that resonates, content that people remember, content that creates interest, not just promotion. And what we say is content that creates connection, not promotion.
And because you can't be pitching all the time.
Right.
Right. And that goes back to what we started talking about, that know, like, and trust aspect of it. It starts with that idea that you're another human being talking to another human being. Because if you write that post and you write that blog and you write that email as if you're literally talking to the person, that will come through and you will it'll be easier to make the connection.
Right.
You have an interesting, there's a piece on the website, I think it's called The Flywheel of Trust.
Yeah.
When you kind of break down how you go through that. And I would encourage folks to go take a look at that, where it's some real basic steps. I don't remember exactly how many steps it was, but it was like, oh, that's really common sense. That's doable. And you could apply that to just about everything that you write to improve your ability to make those connections. And you never know where those connections are going to be. So what, from your perspective, you've got an audience of sales leaders and entrepreneurs, and they want to learn more. Where do you send somebody? LinkedIn, your website, all of the above? Where do you go?
Let me share just one real quick story.
Sure.
Walter, to the point we were talking about. And this is, it may not sound like it, but if you think about it, it is. One of our very first clients, he sent out a cold direct message from somebody that he'd been reaching out to, and had been commenting on the guy's post and following the guy. And he called the guy and asked him for an appointment. And the guy said, "Oh man, I am happy to meet with you. I see you everywhere and I feel like I already know you."
Wow.
And that's know, like, and trust.
Yeah. Because you've carried that through with the places where your people hang out, right?
Right.
And that's, and that allows you to make even more connections that are authentic, which is faster and easier than going to a networking event with a bunch of knuckleheads at a bar, right?
Yeah.
It's we still do those, but they're not as, they're trying to do those now digitally, where people show up. And you got to bring your own drink, right? And your own cigar. So to go back, go to the website, then follow you on LinkedIn. Those are two great ways to learn more and pay attention.
So the website is getfistbumps.com. My email address is butch@getfistbumps.com. I'm on LinkedIn. It's a little funky on LinkedIn. My real name is Robert, but if you started talking to me and calling me Robert, I wouldn't know you were talking to me. But I had to put Robert on my LinkedIn profile to be verifiable. But it shows up Robert Butch Nicholson. But if you put in Butch Nicholson, I'll come up. Yeah. And happy to talk with you, happy to share with you. I love sales, and I'm passionate about sales, and I love helping salespeople. So feel free to reach out. And Walter, I appreciate this opportunity today to like I said, to get to share with somebody who loves sales and loves cigars, which I do. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, it was a natural fit the first time we chatted, and it continues. And we'll have all those items in the show notes so people can just go click and check things out. So I usually ask about if there's a relationship with cigars, but we know there's a relationship with cigars. We've covered part of that. But talk to me about, when it comes to you're doing multiple cigars in a day, and depending upon the day, is there a thing that drew you to cigars initially? Is there a story there? What got you into cigars? Was it a mistake?
Back in the 70s, I used to play golf 3 or 4 times a week. And just the cigars are natural on the golf course, something to do when you're walking between your shots or you're riding in the cart between your shots. And that's where I really got started, was playing golf. And then I actually quit for probably 6 or 8 years. And I think I just thought I needed to. I mean, I can't really remember why I quit, but I do remember why I started back. I have a really good friend, Russ Jones, who's the owner of Waypoint Construction Company here in Atlanta. And I started hanging out with him, playing some golf, and I wound up working with him for a while. And Russ and he wouldn't mind me saying this, he's a solid 4 or 5 cigar a day smoker. And he said, "Come on, man, just try one with me." And I was right back into 4 or 5 a day again.
Well, it's an interesting parallel. Again, I started smoking cigars on the golf course, and my wife will say, I developed 2 bad habits that summer, right? Golf and cigars. But it is a natural, right? Because you're outside. It's usually decent weather, right? Because you're playing golf. And you're also with your friends most of the time. So you have all of those, social, not that golf is super athletic, but especially the way amateurs play, but you got all those connections going on, and, you can get a couple of cigars, done in the front and the back. You can get 2 cigars in. But there's a thing I'm curious if you noticed this when you were playing. Somebody would ask you for a cigar, and then they would treat the cigar like a turd, right? They would throw it on the ground. They wouldn't keep it lit. And then, they would smoke a third of it and just kind of throw it away. So I always kept decent cigars for me, and a friend who liked cigars, I could share a nice one. But then I had these, what I call tractor cigars. They're the guy who wanted a cigar that just wasn't, you knew he wasn't going to knew what he was doing. You give him the $4 cigar instead of the $12 cigar.
I had you'll get a kick out of this, and this happened just probably in the last 3 months. I have a good friend who was not a cigar smoker at all. And he was kind of jealous. We went to there's one really nice cigar place around here that's really not my kind of normal place to go smoke a cigar. I kind of like the older, little dingier places.
Yeah.
But he knew 4 or 5 of us were going there, and he wanted to go there. And he said, "Hey, I want to get a cigar and I want to try this." And I said, "Okay." So when we went in the humidor, I said, "Mark, no matter what you do, don't pay more than $10 for a cigar." And so, of course, he had to get a $20 one. And
just to show off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And if you had, Walter, it was one of the funniest things I ever saw for 30 minutes while I watched him try to light the cigar and burn his hand and burn his face and just destroyed the cigar. And I told him, I said, "That's why I told you not to spend more than $10 on the cigar."
Especially the first one when you're just trying to figure it out. But it sounds like you were a good friend and really helped him learn how to do it right and how to light it. So he pissed away his $20. That's funny.
Well, he's one of those guys with a pretty big ego. So I helped him after he ruined one.
Right.
But I was going to let him ruin one.
Just to make a point.
Humble him a little bit.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. I appreciate you taking the time. I knew we'd have a good conversation. Appreciate you being outside with the cigar. I don't get that a lot to share a cigar with somebody while we're having the conversation. So thank you and appreciate the time. Thanks.